Welcome back to the Rogue Urbex. This is part 2 of 3 of our exploration of an abandoned hospital that dates back to the year 1910, dating this location to well over 110 years old. In part 1 we explored the main building of this hospital and discussed the tumultuous history during which this hospital operated, until it was abandoned and forgotten in the first 2 decades of the new millennium. If you have not yet seen part 1, please feel free to click the link in the description below. This hospital has 3 cornerstones dating 1910, 1927 and 1931, meaning that it has seen its fair share of changes, upgrades and expansions over decades of use by an ever-changing political landscape, ranging from British Colonial Rule through a segregated South Africa to the new South Africa, not to mention various wars such as the First and Second World Wars and the South African Border War. Due to political sensitivity, the advanced state of decay of most buildings and on-site security that guard the few residents that still live in the remaining homes on the compound, we will unfortunately not disclose this hospital's location. So join Rogue and Sinister as we continue our exploration of a location so vast that we had to split this into a 3-part mini-series. And let's see what remains in part 2 as we explore the admin building containing doctors' offices and classrooms, as well as the nurses' residence and the student accommodation situated behind the main building of this massive compound. We are crossing the first floor passage from the hospital main building into the administration building which housed doctors' offices and consultation rooms. Considering that this location is on average between 80 to 110 years old, it is amazing that the structure has held up this well. We still have to tread lightly though, since this building has wooden floors which creates huge risk of stepping through rotten floorboards or worse, plummeting to the floor below. A thunderstorm rolls in as we step onto a balcony with beautiful architecture. They certainly don't build them like they used to, and this balcony overlooks the overgrown grounds of the compound that surrounds it. A breeze of fresh air and the smell of the rain fills the air, always welcome after stepping out of a building that is filled with the smell of decades of decay. On the ground floor we almost get a heart attack as we step through a double door. A feral cat jumps up from below the broken floorboards. It might not look like it, but this was one of my biggest jump scares in the last 3 years. The ground floor greets us with broken and missing floorboards, with a crawl space of about 6 feet down. Definitely a safety concern, but we have to risk it to film what remains of this once grand facility.
Maar hier is uitgebreek hoor. Dis nie van vrot nie.
We find classrooms and admin offices used by the faculty. This was at one stage a training hospital, as you will see later in this video, with even student accommodation on premises. Only cupboards remain, with documents scattered all over, a pitiful end to a once proud institution. Although the hospital was established in 1910, one of the biggest upgrades and expansions was the addition of the nurses' residence in 1931. There used to be a doorway leading into the main building, but this was bricked up as described in part 1 of this series. Remember to click the link in the description if you haven't yet seen it. To get to the nurse's residence, we have to follow an eerie passage on the side of the compound. This passage is filled with tiny pieces of tiles that once lined this corridor. The windows allow in natural light and a view of what was once a beautiful garden. The first room on ground level is that of the matron or head nurse, followed by smaller bedrooms from the nurses and the staff that worked under the matron's supervision. One of my favorite rooms is this one, filled with water from the earlier thunderstorm. It created a beautiful mirror image of the window. This back door steps out into a very overgrown garden. Black soot lines the walls and ceiling, a clear indication that this building suffered a devastating fire. A heavy and sad feeling fills this place. In what used to be the bathrooms, we find the remnants of old computers. We assume that looters brought them here to strip any valuables out of the sight of the security.
Ek wil maar vertrek kom waar die prentjies in die venster geverf is. So.
From the dark, we are suddenly greeted with pictures of cartoon characters painted on the windows that overlook a very overgrown playground. This was the daycare facility for the children of the hospital staff.
Dit was 'n kruis afgebaken.
There are even still children's clothing under decades of rubble and dust. Stepping through a double door, we find a living room with a fireplace. Here, staff could relax and socialize after a long shift or a tough day. Next, we find a very large mess hall where staff could eat together. The decay is worrisome since a lot of buildings are filled with asbestos, so we try not to kick up dust as we explore. The kitchen is quite big, with 2 cold rooms and a door stepping out onto an overgrown parking lot. Here we find the end of the old nurses' residence, with wooden post boxes still lining the wall. This passage also contains one large room for a matron or head nurse, with the rest of the rooms dedicated for general nurses and staff. Worried about the lead paint chips and the damp smell, as well as dust hanging in the air, we decide to rather retrace our steps and make our way to the first floor of the nurses' residence. Climbing these red steps lined with an old wooden handrail, I wonder how grand this place must have been in its heyday. The decay on this floor is immense. The roof and most of the trusses are completely gone. Tiny bedrooms line this hallway, and years of sun, wind and rain have not been kind. This floor once had a spectacular living room with a beautiful fireplace overlooking the gardens and buildings behind the main building of the hospital. For some reason, this place is filled with a very heavy feeling of sadness. What used to be a world-class facility has been reduced to rubble. Its place in society has now faded into distant memory and has all but disappeared. We make our way down the staircase and back to the end of the nurse's residence. Here is where the student accommodation was added in later years. No cornerstone can be found for this expansion, but the architecture dates it to around the 1980s in our estimation. This building goes 2 floors up and is mostly lined with bedrooms for medical students. We did not film every room or floor since they all look alike, but you do get the general idea. This building was also surrounded by beautiful gardens, a once proud institution, now overgrown and falling apart under decades of decay. We finally make our way to the outside and the rear of the massive compound. With part 2 of 3 behind us, we left the best for last, so in part 3 we will be exploring the mortuary housed in a separate building. The pharmacy, located at the back of the main building. the operating theatres. The X-ray and hydrotherapy section. And we end off with the Department of Health's offices, filled with medical consumables and files scattered about. So support the Rogue Urbex initiative by subscribing, liking, commenting and sharing. We'll see you in part 3 as we conclude the daytime urbex of this location.